Who is the real Joe Biden? Well, he may have been elected the President of the United States. He may be the Commander-in-Chief, but that doesn't mean that he is fit for the position he now holds. Recent days, recent events have demonstrated that this man may not be up to the job. Let's just show you a selection of what he has demonstrated to the world is his capacity, his mental and physical capabilities. Let's start with a very, very strange incident where the President of the United States admitted to using a cheat sheet.
Over 500, I have a card, I carry a card with me every day with the total number of folks who have been affected by the, as of yesterday, there are 500,071 people who died from this.
Why would you need a cheat sheet? It's not a difficult number to remember, especially when this is the key crisis that you face as the president, a global pandemic. How does he not know at the top of his head how many people have died in America? Very strange. But it gets even worse. Teleprompters. I don't use teleprompters. I know what I want to talk about. I can give speeches for hours if the topic is right. But teleprompters have a role to play. If you're a politician, you give a lot of speeches, they're supposed to make things easier for you. They roll the speech in front of you on a screen that the viewers can't see. It's kind of like cheating a little bit. It's like an electronic cheat sheet. Well, I guess not for Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Here he is stumbling with a very, very simple text. Let's look at Joe Biden's use of a teleprompter.
The only way to spare more pain and more loss, the only way, these millstones no longer mark our national mourning. These milestones, I should say, no longer mark our national mourning.
We don't make fun of the elderly, especially if they are mentally impaired. But this isn't just a man who has reached his twilight years. This is the individual who has the power of life and death. As the Commander-in-Chief, he has the sole responsibility for launching a nuclear attack. Now, I don't want to be alarmist here, but let's listen to the Democrats. Just 2 days ago, 31 Democrat members of Congress, including your favorites like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and AOC, sent a letter to their Democrat president. Remember, Donald Trump isn't the president anymore. I'm as sad as you are about it. This is their party's president. And what was this letter about? It's unclassified. It was leaked to the press. It's only 2 pages long, and then it has the 31 signatures of the Democrats who had a problem with Joe Biden. And it's a very serious one. Their problem is that he could start a nuclear war. This is the letter on official congressional letter-headed paper, where they say to Joe Biden, the Democrat president, we believe from now on, no one person should have the authority to begin a nuclear war. After decades of creating a system, a fail-safe system, the football that is carried by the military assistant to the president to make sure that we can retaliate against anyone who uses nuclear weapons against us when time is of the essence. Anywhere around the world, thanks to my good friend Jim Carafano of the Heritage Foundation, I found out today 33 minutes is the maximum amount of time we have to respond to a ballistic nuclear missile attack, the maximum time. But 31 Democrats have written to the president to say, you know, we would prefer if you had to get the concurrence of Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and your deputy, Vice President Kamala Harris, before you take the decision. You don't get to do it by yourself. Another recommendation they have, this is a doozy, there should be a committee of Congress that sits down and then debates as to whether we should respond to a nuclear attack. And you, Mr. Commander-in-Chief, you, Joe Biden, don't get to launch the birds, the missiles, unless a committee of Congress agrees with you. It's sheer insanity. I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I think he's cognitively challenged. But the idea that a committee of Congress, are you joking? Now, why did they write the letter is the real question here, my friends. Are they just anti-nuclear war? I don't buy it. This isn't an ideological letter. This is a letter from 31 fellow Democrats who've seen the videos you've just seen. Joe Biden having to use a cheat sheet to remember how many people died of the China virus in America. A man who can't read a teleprompter. And then this is the last one of all. Let me show you this video. This is from a couple of weeks ago, where he's signing one of those 50 executive orders and executive actions, which, remember, he said in the past, only a dictator runs a country by executive orders. Well, I guess you have satisfied your own definition of dictator, Joe Biden. Here he is, after a signing ceremony, trying to take a pen, it's not a difficult task, and put it into his jacket pocket. There, I just did it. I'm looking at you. I didn't look at my jacket, and there it was. I put the pen in my pocket. Here is Joe Biden trying to do the same thing.
My penalty. His first executive order.
Excuse me? I mean, we don't make fun of people who have physical problems, but this is the man in charge of our nuclear weapons. This is a man who, if he calls over the military assistant, they can authorize a nuclear launch with a nuclear football. And he's actually, you can't hear it on that cut. He was mumbling to himself about being incapable of putting his pen in his pocket before he decides to put it in his pants pocket. What is going on? Well, you can ask Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino, good friend of mine, a great American patriot, just a couple of days ago said, as a former Secret Service agent, he's former NYPD, former Secret Service, he said his contacts in the Secret Service are telling him there's big trouble in the White House. And it has to do with Joe Biden's health. Now, God willing, he will recover, or the requisite decision will be taken to remove him from office, and then we get Kamala Harris. Not a big improvement. But until then, this man has the capacity to launch nuclear weapons, and even the Democrats are worried. But let me talk to you about the Joe Biden America has forgotten. Whether it's calling the segregationist Democrat politicians of the South fine gentlemen, or whether it's giving interviews like this about your skin color and who you choose to vote for. Play cuts.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
If you don't know whether you're for me or Donald Trump, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black? Excuse me? That is the antithesis. That's the exact opposite of what Martin Luther King, the Reverend King, taught us. We don't put people into categories. We don't judge them based upon the skin color. That's racist. And I'm just curious, to all those who voted for Democrat nominee Joe Biden, who happen to be black, what do you think of that comment? But let's remind everyone of the most egregious sin this man committed. When George Bush Elder nominated a black conservative to the highest court in the land, a whirlwind ensued. That man was finally confirmed, but he called it a high-tech lynching, the way he was treated by the Senate simply because he was a conservative who happened to be black. Let's listen to Clarence Thomas and that famous moment where he said, "I refuse to surrender." Play cut.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Powerful words from a man who this week dissented as a Supreme Court Associate Justice from the decision of the court not to hear the claims of election fraud from President Trump's team. A man who was the subject of a high-tech lynching at the hands of who? Can you guess? The chairman of that committee was Joseph Robinette Biden. A racist then, a racist now, and a man who may be physically and mentally incompetent, according to his Democrat colleagues. And it's no coincidence, in my opinion, the news broke today that the incredible film, the documentary of Clarence Thomas's life, from poverty to the highest court in the land, a movie called Created Equal, was unilaterally removed from the Amazon streaming service during Black History Month. Why is that? Do people not want to see that footage? Who wants to hide that footage? Just a reminder, who is the real Joe Biden? I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is Greg Kelly Reports on Newsmax. Next, MAGA 2.0. Where does the Make America agenda go next? And the future of Donald J. Trump, my old boss. Stay on this channel. MAGA, Make America Great Again. Along with America First, which just happens to be the name of my radio show, those were the platforms, those were the battle cries of a political movement that changed history when we elected a non-politician, a non-retired general for the first time to the highest position in the land. But he's gone. He's not in the Oval. He might be back, 2024, hashtag 2024. We'll find out on Sunday if my old boss is going to announce. But where is MAGA today? What is MAGA 2.0? Well, things aren't looking good. The first terrorism warning bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security after Joe Biden was sworn in was a very disturbing one. Right at the top of the threat assessment, it didn't talk about ISIS or Al-Qaeda coming back. It didn't talk about BLM or Antifa, who had cost the lives of more than 30 Americans in the last year. It focused on domestic extremists who might have problems with the results of the last election. Did you vote for Donald Trump? Are you one of the 74 million Americans? Does that make you a terrorist threat? Of course not. But this language is dangerous. Already today, CPAC has started the biggest conservative convocation of the year under the guidance of Matt Schlapp. Not in the swamp, not here in D.C., because D.C.'s on lockdown, but in the free state of Florida. Here you can see footage, this amazing, amazing event every year. I wish I could be there. And the president is going to address it on Sunday. It is a sellout. Tickets were sold out weeks ago. What is he going to say? And what is his role in the political future of the greatest nation on God's earth? Let's ask a good friend, regular guest on my radio show, America First, a man who's done business with, negotiated with Donald Trump, a media magnate, a reformer, financier, and an author of an amazing book right here, A President Like No Other, Donald J. Trump and the Restoring of America. He knows Donald John Trump. His name is Lord Conrad Black. Lord Black, welcome to Greg Kelly Reports.
Thank you for having me, Sebastian. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
So, first things first, let me ask you, how perturbed are you at the things you've heard and seen in the last few weeks, the 5 weeks of the Biden administration, where a broad brush has been attempted to be applied over 74 million Americans as some kind of domestic threat? Is this a wise move in a free republic like America, Lord Black?
I've been very perturbed by it, and of course it is not wise, and it's not legal. It's outrageous, and there's no precedent for it. I mean, I confess to you and your listeners and viewers to be old enough to remember the McCarthy era, and there were some bad things that happened, but there was a legitimate element of national security involved. There's no doubt that communist espionage assisted Stalin in developing the hydrogen bomb, and there were some communist sympathizers who were in influential positions in Hollywood. I don't think there were any who were betraying the country, but they were sympathetic to the idea. And it was outrageously misused, and all sorts of people were unfairly defamed and tainted. But it wasn't a mass stigmatization of effectively half the population. It wasn't half of the voters in a presidential election through their representatives trying to banish and demolish and defame the other half, and that's what we're talking about here. And I don't believe there's public support for this, but it's shocking, and it goes on and on. And I saw John Brennan on television yesterday, as I'm sure you and many of your viewers did, holding forth very tendentiously and all but naming the Trump supporters as people capable of trying to conduct an attempted violent overthrow of the government. And part of it is this nonsense to try and portray the regrettable events of January the 6th as something like Hitler's, beer hall putsch in 1923, the first attempt of a number of attempts ultimately successful by an evil fascist dictator to take over a great country. I mean, that's what they're trying to profess is in the offing, and it's absolutely outrageous.
Well, he got more votes than any incumbent president in U.S. history, more votes from black and Hispanic Americans than any Republican since the 1960s. He's back on the stage already, just 5 weeks after the inauguration on Sunday. Lord Black, what do you expect him to say, and what would you like him to say?
He's not the easiest person to predict, Sebastian. You know him as I do, and he's so it's a little hazardous to try and do that. But and I'm reluctant to give advice, which he certainly hasn't solicited. And if I got advice to him, I wouldn't have much assurance he would follow it. And he might, he might be right not to follow it. But I think he is going to make it clear, as he has already said in some of his tweets, or I guess they're not tweets anymore, just statements issued in response to events, including Senator McConnell's antics, that the MAGA movement, about which you're chiefly speaking now, it's at a stage, but it is absolutely going forward and has excellent prospects, and he expects it to be back and legitimized and in office again, which means that whether he runs as president or someone that he approves of runs as president in 2024, a MAGA candidate will be victorious. I think he'll emphasize that. I don't think he will, at this early stage, end the suspense about whether he is seeking to return as president. But apart from that, I would assume he would debunk the record of this administration. I mean, we were all set up to believe that with control of the House and narrow control of the Senate, 100 days, a phrase from the Roosevelt era, of the most dramatic and profound legislative innovation in the history of the country that something like that was afoot. You know, the $2,000 COVID checks would be flying out to people as soon as the new president was inaugurated. They haven't been sent yet, and they haven't been authorized. And even Trump, as you know, approved the $2,000 payments, not the rest of this gigantic boondoggle, but the $2,000 payments. And nothing has happened except executive orders that have added up to very alarming changes in policy. I mean, towards the goals espoused by the left wing of the Democratic coalition.
Well, he might not announce, but I think he's going to play with the idea, and the fake news industrial complex will be tearing their hearts out. They'll be tearing their hair out. He is the man who wrote the book, A President Like No Other, Donald John Trump and the Restoring of America. Follow him, Conrad M. Black, on